Today I will be discussing the topic of Plato on medicine and philosophy and how he believed the two were one and the same. Plato's main idea and what he is most famous for is his idea of the city-state. The city-state is what it sounds like. It is a combination of a city and state, and it was his version of an ideal society. In this ideal society, in Plato's mind, the ideal society would be ruled by philosophers such as himself, and that people below him would be producers, farmers, artisans, and doctors. They were all on the same level. Um, in this society, children don't know who their parents are. The women's main job is just to birth children, and then the children are raised as a whole by the community, as opposed to having specialized families. In this society, men are the hunters and gatherers, and it is extremely important for them to be the main providers in the community, as women's sole purpose, again, is just to have children. And then the children grow up and the cycle repeats itself. It is mentioned in Plato's Republic that he does, in fact, agree that there needs to be a specialization of the profession of being a doctor. He says, Plato recognizes the need for doctors in his Republic. There must be specialized of any labor in a complex society. And he says that in his Republic in fragment 373. In the ideal city-state, however, it was extremely important to not necessarily rely on medical intervention, but instead it was important to rely on prevention and taking care of yourself, eating good food to make sure that you didn't get any ailments or get hurt, taking those kind of precautions, as opposed to just relying on having doctors intervene for any medical care. Another thing that Plato is extremely well known for is his idea of the forms, which were almost his equivalent to the Ten Commandments. There were significantly more of them, but they were just rules or ideal virtues he thought that people should live by, and that it was obvious to Plato that health was important, as he does list it in one of the forms. It was actually fragment 65 in the forms. However, overall, his view on medicine is that prevention is best, and that he understands that health is needed and that taking care of yourself is an important thing to do. However, he doesn't necessarily agree with medical intervention. It was said in an article by Dr. William Dempsey that he was talking about Plato's views on medicine, that Plato is opposed to the type of scientism or materialism that sees health solely in terms of biological, meaning that Plato views health as a spirit, mind, and body offense, as opposed to just simply you're bleeding out, you need taken care of sense. So he was somewhat progressive for his time in that aspect. Another thing important to note about Plato is that he did seem to have a very in-depth understanding of immunity and how the immune system and like the body and mind were connected as one. In an article by Dr. Mose, he talks about that good doctors recognize the point at which to step in and help urge to self-healing already at work within the patient. So Plato does fully understand that if you cut yourself, you're able to form a blood clot and you're able to heal yourself in that sense. He was able to observe that, and he puts an emphasis on that. And one of a really interesting quote by Plato is he goes, the greatest mistake in the treatment of diseases is that there are physicians for the body and physicians for the soul, although the two cannot be separated. He believes that in order to have a healthy spirit, mind, and body, that you have to combine all three. So if your mental health isn't great, then you're not going to be at your physical best, and vice versa. Plato does, however, seem to prioritize mental health over physical health, as he believes that it's more important for someone to be healthy with their spirituality and in their view of virtue than it is to be physically fit. Yeah, Plato, again, he believes that a virtuous soul is much more healthy overall than someone who is just simply physically fit. In an article, again, the same article by Mose, where he's discussing Plato's views on what he believes Plato would have thought mental health would have looked like in his ideal society had he had the research. Plato explains that a fit body doesn't by its own virtue make the soul good, but instead the opposite is true. A good soul by its own virtue makes the body as good as possible. This is really important to note as it shows that Plato, while he did understand medicine and that it was important and that being healthy physically was important, he didn't fully understand the importance of physical health. He thought most of physical and mental health came from your relationship with virtue and your belief system. And we now know that based on modern technology that that is not always the case. Yeah, overall, Plato was known for his view of the city-state and how he had everything tie into that, such as he believed doctors were in fact an important role in the city-state. However, he didn't believe they were of utmost importance or on the same level that we put them to in modern society. He also has a very holistic approach to medicine, meaning he believes that the spirit, mind, and body all need to be healthy in order to achieve overall health, which is something we do still practice in modern medicine today. And overall, he had a very in-depth understanding of immunity, as he understood that if you got sick, you could eventually recover, and that if you cut yourself, you'd eventually form a scab and you would heal yourself. He did understand that from his own observations. And so he did have a very in-depth understanding of the human body and somewhat mental health for the time period. However, he did fail to note that there are invisible illnesses, such as chronic illnesses and things of that sort, being that he didn't have the technology. Overall, though, he was very ahead of his time in his beliefs on medicine, and we still take a lot of note from his beliefs today.